Congressman Bishop's lands bill and the role PacifiCorp is playing in it. It all appears to be related to energy and the PacifiCorp energy gateways / corridors that they are planning throughout the western states.
Hello, I'm Monty Wells with PetroCorp. Today I'm going to talk to you about some research I've been doing into the Bishop's lands bill and what's possibly what I feel is the reason it's being pushed through. If you remember right, Senator Bennett tried to do a similar thing, a lands bill for every county in Utah. He was able to get Washington County done, and that lands bill was pretty much a mess. As one commissioner put it, before the ink was even dry, they had a lawsuit against him from SUA. It wasn't too long after that as well that the Obama administration went ahead and designated a section of land within the agreed upon lands bill area. So the lands bill didn't do much, and as a result, people were not very happy, and if you remember right, Senator Bennett lost his job. I've always wondered then why, if Senator Bennett lost his job over it, did Congressman Bishop and Congressman Chaffetz jump on board with it and put together a lands bill? Why the big push, even despite the fact that the grazing organization in San Juan County is totally against the Settler Land Exchange. Most of the citizens in San Juan County are against the lands bill at all and want pretty much the county just to tell them we're not having a part of it. We're not going to give you land. If the federal government's going to take it, then let them take it. But we're not going to give it to them. Why has this been happening? So I started looking at each element of the lands bill, the different groups, and different things that were going on. And what I came across was this map that's behind me here. This map here, I'll try to zoom in here just a little bit on it, if I can. This map here, this was a map put out by PacifiCorp. In 2008, PacifiCorp came out with a map that had energy corridors on it and reflected what their proposed actions were going to be, or what their proposed energy corridors for the entire western states. California being the key place because that's where the majority of all their energy they collect goes to and is sold.
The 2008 map by PacifiCorp appears to be one of the first maps talking about these energy corridors or energy gateways. But then in 2011, a company by the name of K2O Potash in San Juan County came out with their own Settler Land Exchange map of their project and showing this energy corridor all the way up into Green River. In June of 2013, Commissioner Adams of San Juan County presented the county's map. This is a copy of it with some illustrations on it showing the land that they were going to exchange, that they had agreed to, and then also talking about these energy corridors and how they were going to play into this Settler Land Exchange and what was going to take place. On August 7, 2013, Settler finally released a map showing this energy corridor indicated on this map here, which is a copy of that map in yellow, showing these energy corridors that they were going to do the Settler Land Exchange for in trading out these public lands for this corridor. The interesting thing that you need to remember is that all these corridors on these different maps appear to correspond with the 2008 map that PacifiCorp came out with, showing the corridors for these energy gateways or energy corridors that they wanted. So the next question was who is PacifiCorp, and how were they able to have enough power or influence to make these energy corridors happen and this lands bill take place? Now, PacifiCorp and California Independent Systems Operating Corporation have joined together to have these energy gateways that they talked about. PacifiCorp is also a subsidiary of Mid-American Energy. Mid-American is one of the dominant U.S. utilities in the ownership of renewables. and is itself a subsidiary of Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway. Just to show you sort of some of the ties there. PacifiCorp serves 1.7 million electric customers in 6 western states, operating as Pacific Power in Oregon, Washington, and California, and Rocky Mountain Power in Utah, Wyoming, and Idaho. So they've got a good footprint in the western states. They were the transmission companies, that had the transmission lines and that, and they moved into owning all the generation facilities as well, which under federal regulation, they're not supposed to be able to do that, only under certain circumstances, and that's where those step-ins come in. And then they can buy these things up, and with them owning both, they have pretty good control. And they talk about that in their energy gateway, where having that control can even out things to make the flow of energy more constant or something like that, which is interesting. Maybe so, maybe not, but it does create a government-sanctioned monopoly, basically, for the western states. Now, I did have a map that showed some of the plants that they own and stuff like that, and then I came across on their website them listing the generation facilities that they say they own. So what they say here is the company-owned net generation capacity is 10,595 megawatts, 74 generating plants. Coal-fueled facilities, they own 11. Hydroelectric facilities, 43. Natural gas facilities, 5. On here they say wind facilities, 13. But in my count, counting the ones all over Wyoming and throughout Utah and Washington and Oregon and stuff, I've got a count of 21. And geothermal and other facilities they have listed as 2. Here I have them down for also 1 solar plant, and that's the rest of it's about the same. The map that I put out, based on the information that I found on the website, shows the corridors and these transmission lines or corridors that they want, that these energy gateways are, and that all corresponds with that original map that the proposed section 368 energy corridors with major visual and cultural resources, the November 2008 map that PacifiCorp had put out talking about the energy corridors that they were proposing and looking at throughout the western states. So from this information, we know that PacifiCorp is a large company. They own a lot of the transmission. They own a lot of generation plants. But then when you look at this energy corridors or these energy gateways, the other question to come up is how are they able to do this? In 2006 or 2005, there was the Energy Policy Act of 2005 was passed by Congress. What this did was the federal, it basically set up things saying that companies need to buy renewable energy more than they do oil and gas and all the other ones that, the things we've been using for years. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, issued an order in 2006 providing an array of incentives to build new transmissions. And transmissions, just in a nutshell here, in the energy field, you've got generating facilities and you've got the transmission facilities or lines.
PacifiCorp, that's what they do. I mean, they handle a lot of the transmission stuff.
There was some other acts that were passed in 2009, 2012 that also set the stage for incentives and making this worthwhile to do for PacifiCorp to control the western states along with this company in California. There was an act passed in 2009 called the Clean Energy and Securities Act of 2009, which established subsidies and things like that that would be given to companies for, you know, producing energy and wind farms and all that kind of stuff. And part of that act dealt with a lot of that, dealt with other issues pertaining to that, and making it possible for that to happen. The nickname on this was called the Waxman and Markey Act, or bill, because those were the sponsors of the bill when it was finally. To support my theory on the Sittler Land Exchange being a key point in this lands bill, there's some documentation that I come across that I'd like to present. There's an act called the Utah Recreational Land Exchange Act of 2009. It was House of Representatives Bill 1275. That it was passed in the 111th Congress, and it was presented by Representative Matheson. This bill appears to have been presented back in 2005 as Senate Bill 1135 by Senator Bennett. It's been around for a little bit. It came about through Senator Bennett and appears to have been part of his land. It was finally passed in 2009, and it's the bill involves the trading of Sittler land. It's an agreement between the state of Utah, the Sittler, and the state land, and it's a bill between. It's an agreement between them and the BLM. What it basically says here is that the agreement was for the land, the Sittler land in San Juan County, Grand County, and Uinta County to be able to be traded quickly and easily. If the Sittler wants to trade some land, it sort of forces the government to trade it, as well as it makes it easier for that to happen. In a nutshell, that's what it is. This was passed in 2009. The Sittler Land Exchange that was done in the recreation up around behind the rocks and that kind of thing outside Moab and a couple other places. Well, this is what did that. Definitely sets the stage for this Sittler Land Exchange that is being done in Bishop's Land Bill. There was a report done by the Heritage Center, and the report is called the Report of the Heritage Center for Data Analysis, the Economic Consequences of the Waxman and Markey, an analysis of the American Clean Energy and Securities Act of 2009, done by David W. Boy, I'm not going to be able to say this name, but Kreutzer, I believe, with a PhD, Karen A. Campbell, PhD, William Beach, and Ben Lieberman, and Nicole D. Loris were the ones that put it together. It's got a date on it here of August 6, 2009. It's been pretty interesting reading through it because they talk about the effects of this original bill, that Clean Air and Securities Act, what it was going to do to the economy. Anyway, it says here that the Waxman-Markey climate change bill would add to families' shares of national debt. So because it's increasing the national debt, they're going to show, they're going to point out how much it's going to increase each family's share of the national debt, you know, as this goes through. So it starts out at 2012, goes all the way to 2035. It says the legislation would add every year an average of $5,000 to each family's share of the national debt. By 2035,
that share will have grown by nearly $115,000 per family. Now, mind you, they put this out in opposing the bill. The bill was. They go through and they talk about the results, what it's going to do to states, and how it's going to affect them as far as the economy goes, loss of jobs, that kind of thing. So the first column here that I'm going to tell you the number on, the average personal income loss between 2012 and 2035 is what I'm going to read you, and this is in millions of dollars. So in Utah, that average personal income loss is $806 million in that length, in that span between 2012 2035. The average GDP loss in the same time span in millions is $2,417 million. The average non-farm job loss is 11,170 jobs for Utah. That's quite an effect, and we're seeing some of that today in the economy. One
of the other issues here is the amount of money that's involved, not only from the incentives and the programs themselves, but the amount of money that's used to get the bills passed. As we see here, 2009, Berkshire Hathaway, who owns PacifiCorp, spent over $10 million lobbying. Prior to that, they hardly spent anything. So it creates an environment of corruption, a potential for corruption at the local, state, and federal levels, also an environment of quid pro quo. With energy companies making donations to our congressmen and to our local officials like Governor Herbert and things, it sets a stage for influencing what is to be done, like this energy corridor and the lands bill and things like that. Along with this, we also see legal complaints of unfair practices. Those that aren't working with PacifiCorp and other energy companies get treated different than those that are working with them. It seems the way is made easier for those that are. And because of the influence throughout the state level, local levels, it doesn't seem that there's much of a recourse for those other companies unless they play ball. At least that's what it appears. This brings us back to Congressman Bishop's land bill and the role that PacifiCorp is playing in it. PacifiCorp wants these corridors, or these gateways, throughout the western United States so they can control the energy. How do they do that? Through the settler land exchange. The real question is, how do you get this accomplished with the levels of corruption, quid pro quo, the amount of money, everything that's going on here, done, the selling of state lands, trading out state lands for federal lands, and all of this so that these energy corridors and gateways can be created. It appears to be nothing more than a street corner shell game where you distract people from seeing what's really going on. You get them fighting about different designations, wilderness, national conservation areas, closures, all this kind of stuff. Meanwhile, on the backside, the deals have already been made to make the settler land exchange, to create these energy corridors for companies like PacifiCorp and the company out of California to basically have a government-sanctioned monopoly to control all the energy in the western United States. Most folks are not going to agree to trading out all these settler lands for federal lands with the BLM and stuff. But as this state map shows, the little red squares are the ones that they're going to trade out. And if you want to get that done without a lot of controversy, a lot of problems, if you can get things designated as wilderness, national conservation areas, whatever it may be, the state lands have to be removed from those designated areas. So you remove them, where are they going to go? Well, they're going to go into this energy corridor. So it's a win-win. You get people fighting about it, you get people arguing about it, you get some designations, those state sections come into your settler land exchange. The ones that don't, you've already made the deals that are there. The problem is what's going to happen when we have these energy corridors? Having energy is a good thing, but as we've seen with the corruption and the potential for corruption because of the money and this government-sanctioned monopoly, what's the end game here? What's going to be the end result to us? Well, immediately the result is we're losing our access to public lands, and it's all being traded away by our state agency, SITLA, the state government, the federal government, the BLM, and everybody, because they're all taking a piece of the pie. We've seen by the donations, we've seen by the money that's been passed around, and the contributions that have been made to our elected officials. You can guarantee the same thing's been going on through the Department of Interior, which Congressman Bishop sits on the board over. Anyway, so there's a lot of things here that opens the door for problems for us, and it all stems, in my opinion, from what I can see, from these energy corridors that aren't getting a lot of attention anymore because everybody's bickering about the stuff on top. And when the end game comes around, when the bill is passed and we all look at it, I think even the environmentalists and the conservatives are both, on both sides of the issue, are definitely not going to be happy with what is taking place.